Challenging, respectful, just, I would suggest. That was the debate you've just heard here between Yvette Cooper and James Cleverly. And listening, let's get the important input now from the LBC's political editor, Natasha Clark. A lot of numbers were quoted to each other. It's impossible to keep. It's like being in the middle of an avalanche of figures thrown at each other. But what did you learn?
Nick, that was a very testy, I think, debate between the two of them. Yes, of course, these are the two people vying to become Home Secretary again. And of course, migration is such an important part of this debate. It's an issue for voters. We know it gets everybody riled up on both sides. Both parties could not be more different in their attitudes to how they want to tackle small boats and Rwanda. We started off asking them about migration. Labour's Yvette Cooper refusing repeatedly to put a number on what she thinks migration needs to come down to.
We won't set a target.
Why?
Because we think that every time the Conservatives have done that, they've failed, and they're not even
doing
so now.
But I'm asking the Labour Party to set a target.
They've discredited it. And if you look at it from one year to another, it is obviously, it will be affected by things like the Homes for Ukraine visa that did obviously increase numbers.
I think we can put an asterisk by that.
And
so
the
I think
pandemic,
Afghanistan or whatever,
exactly.
We understand that.
And the pandemic also reduced numbers in that year. So we don't think it's right to have a particular number target. We do think it's right to have a significant reduction.
But what's significant?
And we do think that net migration needs to come down. And we've set out a plan to reduce it.
So this is another example of what Labour are saying now in complete contradiction to what Labour were doing only very recently. So when I became Home Secretary, I introduced a series of visa restrictions because legal migration was too high. I introduced a minimum salary threshold.
Yep.
I restricted foreign students bringing family members when they come to the UK. And every single one of those measures was criticised and opposed at the time by the Labour Party.
That's not true.
They talk about wanting to bring this down, but this is a road to Damascus style conversion.
Nick, then you moved on to asking them about the Bibi Stockholm Barge and what is the future of those people on there. I find it quite staggering that the Home Secretary doesn't know how many people are on that barge. Yvette Cooper said if Labour get into the power, they would force those people off the Bibi Stockholm, but she couldn't say when that would happen. She did admit she couldn't do it on day one of a Labour government. You then moved on to visas. I think it was very interesting to hear from Yvette Cooper. I think she suggested that there would be another review, and we know Labour love a review of all of these policies, but it seemed to me that she was leaning into the idea that they would look to potentially scrap some of those salary thresholds for spousal visas. They said they would keep some of the ones that are already existing in place, but would look to review some of the other ones as well. Another interesting admission from Yvette Cooper. Labour would look at other partnerships with third country deals. Of course, they've slammed the Rwanda plan again and again, but James Cleverly pressing them, well, what would you do for those people who come from Iran, come from Iraq, come from Syria, all of those things? Labour essentially saying they would look at other partnerships, admitting that they would do so. They also got into a real balmy about that EU quota scheme as well. James Cleverly saying, look, you're going to open the door to 100,000 potential migrants at some point. Essentially, Yvette Cooper saying that's absolute garbage, that's absolute rubbish. We are not going to do that. We're not going to open the EU quota schemes on that. And again, the ECHR, another question which I think both had really very clear answers on different sides of the equation. Labour's Yvette Cooper saying absolutely not, we're not going to leave the ECHR. James Cleverly, who obviously privately agrees with her, saying that Rishi Sunak should be leaving the door open to potentially leaving the ECHR if a foreign court interrupts our Rwanda flights.